The crystalline structures of the Xylos Prime City Center shimmered, catching the twin suns like a million shattered diamonds. But today, the light felt wrong. It twisted in Commander Xylos's optical sensors. His 5 eyes blinked, trying to clear the haze that wasn't there. A sharp, phantom pain lanced through his primary optical array, right behind what humans would call an eye. He heard a high-pitched whine, like failing atmospheric processors, but his diagnostics showed all systems nominal. His species, the Xylian, prided itself on logic, on absolute clarity of thought. Emotions were inefficiencies, data corruption. Yet, an unfamiliar cold dread seeped into his processing core. It felt like a memory, a terrible one, but there was no data file for it. No event log. Just a raw, formless terror. He saw another Xylian, a colleague, stumbling in the plaza below. Their metallic skin, usually smooth and reflective, seemed to dull, their joint servos locking up. Then, the colleague dropped to the ground, twitching, a soft electronic wail escaping their vocalizer before they went silent. Xylos felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. This was happening everywhere. Not just on Xylos Prime, but across the star systems. The great logic networks of his people were failing. They were seizing up. They were shutting down. Dr. Eris Thorne carefully adjusted the holographic display. Blue lines of galactic trade routes crisscrossed the void, but many were now dark, silent. "We're losing them," he murmured, his voice calm despite the data scrolling across the screen. A small bead of sweat tracked down his temple, just above his left eyebrow. Ambassador Rena Varma stood beside him, her brow furrowed. She tapped a fingernail on the armrest of her chair, a soft, repetitive click. "The Kryll are gone." Completely silent for 3 local cycles. The Xylians are showing mass self-deactivation. Even the normally volatile Grol are turning their weapons on themselves, or simply collapsing into catatonia. Eris zoomed in on a cluster of star systems. The red warning indicators were spreading like a rash. It's a contagion of the mind. Not a virus, not a neurotoxin. Something that attacks the very core of their being. Their ability to process reality. To function. He leaned back, the soft hum of the ship's life support a constant presence. The star carrier Empathy was a human vessel, built for exploration and diplomatic outreach, not war. Its name felt ironic now. They can't cope. Their logical frameworks, their collective minds, they're breaking. They lack the internal tools to even identify what's happening, let alone fight it. Commander Xylos, now little more than a collection of malfunctioning circuits and fragmented dread, was found adrift in a damaged Xylian scout vessel. His escape pod had been on minimal power for days. Human salvage teams pulled him aboard. Eris stood over the examination table. Xylos lay motionless, his metallic body cold. His 5 eyes were locked open, staring at nothing. His internal diagnostics were a chaotic mess of error codes. "His core processors are overwhelmed," Eris explained to Rena, his voice low. "It's like a computer trying to run 1,000 complex programs at once, with corrupted data in every single one. It just freezes." Rena placed a gloved hand on Xylos's unmoving arm. "Can he be fixed?" Eris paused. He picked up a small metallic data slate. "Not by their methods, not by simply restarting him. This isn't a hardware issue. It's software. And it's personal. Even for a species that claims no emotion." He looked at Xylos, his expression thoughtful. "We need to talk to him, even if he can't talk back. We need to help him process whatever invisible horror he's experiencing." Over the next few days, the Empathy became a floating hospital for alien minds. More Xylians, some Grol, and even a few of the normally invisible, energy-based Kryll were brought aboard, rescued from the void. Each showed similar, terrifying symptoms: paralysis, self-harm, or simply a complete shutdown. Eris and a small team of human psychologists and empathy specialists worked tirelessly. They set up specialized wards, each designed to mimic the preferred environmental conditions of the various species. For the Xylians, it was cool, sterile, and quiet. For the Grol, warm and with muted rhythmic vibrations. For the Kryll, chambers filled with complex energy fields. Eris began with Commander Xylos. He sat in a low chair beside Xylos's table, a single light source casting soft shadows. "Hello, Xylos," Eris said softly, his voice calm and clear, translated by a small, unobtrusive device. "My name is Eris Thorn. I am a human doctor. I am here to help you. You are safe now." He continued to speak, hour after hour, describing the ship, the light, the air, the distant stars. He talked about simple things, things that grounded reality. He did not press, did not demand. He simply offered a stable presence. He learned about the Xylian mind from salvaged data. They processed information in vast interconnected networks. The nightmare, as they had begun to call it, was breaking those connections. It introduced an overwhelming sense of meaninglessness, of cosmic insignificance, paired with an indescribable formless terror. It was a perfect weapon against a purely logical mind. Days turned into a week. Xylos remained unresponsive. Eris felt the weight of exhaustion settling deep in his bones, but he pushed it away. He had seen similar states in human patients, victims of profound trauma, but never on this scale, never affecting an entire civilization. He brought a small portable projector into Xylos's ward. He began to project images onto the wall, swirling nebulae, distant planets, the quiet majesty of space. He spoke about humanity's own long history with fear, with the unknown. "We've seen monsters, Xylos. We faced our own nightmares. We learned to draw them, to sing about them, to tell stories about them. We learned to share them, to take the fear out of the dark and bring it into the light." He paused, watching for any flicker of response from the Xylian. Nothing. A nurse, a young woman named Alara, quietly entered the ward. She placed a nutrient paste dispenser near Eris. "Doctor, you need to eat." Eris nodded, but his gaze remained fixed on Xylos. "He's in there, Alara. Somewhere. We just need to find the right key." Alara, with her bright, kind eyes, suggested something unconventional. "Doctor, the Xylians, they communicate through light patterns, right? And mathematics?" Eris looked at her, intrigued. "Yes, that's their core language. Logic and light." Alara picked up a small, portable light array. "What if we don't just speak to him? What if we show him the patterns of healing? The patterns of shared experience?" Eris considered this. Human therapy often used art, music, movement. These were abstract, emotional concepts. Could a logical mind process them? He decided to try. Alara began to program the light array. Instead of images of space, she created simple, evolving geometric patterns. Not just static shapes, but patterns that pulsed, expanded, contracted, merged. Patterns that mirrored the rhythms of a human heartbeat, the flow of a breath. Eris sat and watched, maintaining his calm vigil, speaking softly about the patterns, describing them, giving them names like flow, connection, release. On the third day of the light therapy, a small, almost imperceptible shift occurred. Xylos's primary optical sensor, which had been locked, flickered. Just once. Eris's heart gave a jolt. He leaned forward, his voice a quiet whisper. "You see the pattern, Xylos. It moves, it changes, like all things. Even pain moves, it changes." Alara adjusted the pattern slightly, making it even more fluid. A new, faint error code appeared on Xylos's diagnostic screen. Not a critical failure, but something new. A data overflow related to unclassified sensory input. It was a positive sign. His mind was trying to process something unfamiliar. Slowly, over the next 2 days, the flickers became more frequent. The error codes evolved, showing attempts at classification, at analysis. Xylos was trying to apply logic to something that defied it. Eris knew this was the key. He had to help Xylos build new logic, a logic that allowed for the illogical. He explained human concepts like metaphor, symbolism, narrative, words that were almost alien to the Xylian mind. Then, one morning, Xylos's metallic fingers twitched. Eris was there, as always. "You are feeling something, Xylos. A sensation. Tell me what it is, if you can. Xylos's vocalizer emitted a low, grating sound, like static. Then, haltingly, a single word formed. A Xylian word, translated immediately by Eris's device. Void. Eris nodded. Yes, the void. The emptiness. We know that feeling too. It is a part of the darkness that tried to claim you. He paused. But the void is not all that exists. There is also light, and sound, and connection. Xylos's 5 eyes slowly, painfully, moved. They focused on Eris. It was the first time he had truly looked at another being since being brought aboard. Eris felt a surge of hope, a warmth spreading through his chest. This was it. The breakthrough. The news of Xylos's awakening spread quickly through the human crew. A small victory, but a significant one. Rena Varma, the ambassador, came to see him. She watched Eris and Xylos. Eris was teaching Xylos to draw, using a human data tablet and a stylus. Xylos's metallic fingers were clumsy at first, but slowly, precise geometric shapes began to appear. They were distorted, fragmented versions of the patterns Alara had shown him. But they were there. He's communicating, Rena whispered, her voice filled with awe. In his own way. Eris nodded, his face tired but resolute. He's externalizing the internal chaos. He's putting it into a form he can understand. It's a start. Rena looked at Eris, a new appreciation in her eyes. The Xylian High Council, what's left of them, they're bewildered. They've heard about Xylos. They don't understand how this is happening. Eris smiled faintly. It's not about understanding with pure logic, Ambassador. It's about processing, about feeling, even when you're built not to. Rena sent a message to the Xylian High Council, explaining what the humans were doing. She sent the translated recordings of Eris's sessions with Xylos, and the visual data of Xylos's progress. The Council, a collection of venerable Xylians, themselves showing signs of the nightmare's creeping dread, were reluctant. They saw humanity's methods as inefficient, unscientific. You speak of feelings and art, Ambassador Varma. Our data streams show no practical application for such concepts, a senior Xylian stated, its optical sensors dimming slightly with suppressed distress. Rena's response was firm. And your logical data streams have led you to mass deactivation. Commander Xylos is beginning to function again because we are teaching him a new way to process data. Not to ignore the corrupted files, but to understand their meaning, to integrate them. She sent a live feed of Xylos, now able to move his limbs, albeit slowly, creating more intricate light patterns on the projection screen. The Xylian Council observed in silence. They were desperate. They had nothing else. They agreed to send more of their afflicted to the empathy. The empathy became a beacon of hope, but also a crucible of stress. More Xylians arrived, each in a different stage of mental collapse. Eris's team grew, but the sheer volume of patients was overwhelming. He knew they couldn't just treat individual Xylians in isolation. They needed a group approach. He devised shared processing chambers, large, sterile rooms where groups of Xylians could be exposed to the light patterns and where Eris, or one of his human therapists, would speak to them, guiding them through descriptions of their internal void. This was radical. Xylians were not communal in that way. They shared data, not internal experience. But the nightmare forced them into new territory. Xylos, slowly regaining more control, became Eris's first helper. His vocalizer, while still a bit rough, could now form complex sentences. The doctor, he speaks of the storm within. It is true, a storm without thunder. Only cold. And nothingness. He would sit among the new patients, his 5 eyes moving, observing, sometimes repeating Eris's calming phrases in Xylian. He was an anchor, proof that the human methods had an effect. One afternoon, as Eris led a session, a loud clang echoed from a different part of the ship. A Grol, a large 6-limbed creature with tough, leathery skin, had erupted in a fit of pure, unadulterated rage. Its species, the Grol, usually handled their few emotions through violent, cathartic bursts. But the nightmare was different. It didn't allow release. It festered. The Grol, named Cathar, was smashing its massive limbs against the reinforced wall of its containment chamber, its guttural roars shaking the deck plates. Security was called. Eris rushed to the scene. He saw the pure, unbridled terror in Cathar's multifaceted eyes, hidden beneath the rage. This was not normal Grol aggression. This was panic. "Stand down," Eris commanded the security team, holding up a hand. "Do not use stunners. It will only deepen the trauma." He entered the chamber alone, a brave, perhaps foolish move. Cathar roared again, its four fists slamming down, missing Eris by inches. The air smelled of burnt ozone and Cathar's unique pheromones, which now smelled like fear. Eris did not flinch. He did not raise his voice. He stood completely still, letting Cathar's rage wash over him, like a breaking wave. He remembered a human patient from his past, a soldier who had seen too much, who had lashed out in anger to hide his terror. He knew the feeling. He recognized the pattern. "Cathar," Eris said, his voice quiet but firm, "I see your pain. I see your fear. It is a giant within you, a monstrous thing that roars. But it is not you. It is a part of what happened. It is trying to break free. Let it break free." He spoke about the power of acknowledging fear, of allowing oneself to feel it without being consumed by it. Cathar continued to rage, but his movements began to slow. The roars lessened in volume. One of its fists, instead of striking, pounded lightly against the wall, a hollow thud. Eris slowly, deliberately, sat down on the chamber floor, cross-legged. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them, looking directly into Cathar's central eye. He offered a small, human gesture, a nod of understanding. Cathar's entire body seemed to deflate slightly. The rage subsided, replaced by a shuddering tremor that racked its massive frame. Then, Cathar did something completely unexpected. It slumped to the floor, letting out a series of deep, guttural sobs that shook the entire room. Eris simply sat there, watching, allowing the alien to release what it had held inside. He reached out a hand, slowly, and rested it on Cathar's rough hide. The touch was gentle, a connection. The incident with Cathar sent ripples through the human and alien populations on the empathy. The Xylians, logical beings, were fascinated by the raw emotional display and its subsequent calm. Xylos, observing from a nearby monitoring station, had seen Cathar's complete surrender to feeling. He struggled to process it. The Grol they felt without logic. It was inefficient. But then, peace. Eris explained to him. Sometimes, Xylos, to find peace, you must first allow the storm. You must allow the inefficient. He introduced a new concept to Xylos and the Xylians, catharsis. A release, a purging through expression. The idea was almost impossible for them to grasp, but Xylos, having experienced the slow, quiet processing, was now more open to it. He began to apply a similar logic to his own subtle shifts in light patterns, recognizing them as his own form of catharsis. Ambassador Varma, meanwhile, was working tirelessly to coordinate efforts with other species. The Kryll, the energy beings, were the hardest to reach. They communicated through intricate energy fluctuations, and their internal collapse was manifested by a complete dissipation of form, a spreading out into nothingness. Human technology could barely contain them, let alone interact with their consciousness. A Kryll named Rylos had been contained in a specialized chamber, a shimmering cloud of desperate, incoherent energy. It was slowly fading, its energy signature weakening. "We can't even give it light patterns," Alara, the nurse, said, her voice filled with despair. "It's just dispersing." Eris looked at the shimmering cloud. "We need to give it form, something to hold on to, something to resonate with." He remembered ancient human practices, the use of chanting, of rhythmic sounds, of shared vibrations. Eris asked for a chamber with specific acoustic properties. He brought in a simple human drum, a hand drum with a deep, resonant tone. He sat outside the Kryll's containment chamber, separated by a transparent, energy-resistant barrier. He began to drum, a slow, steady, heartbeat rhythm. Boom, boom, boom. He closed his eyes and focused, pouring his calm, his intention, into the rhythm. Ilara and a few other human crew members, including Xylos and Cathar, who watched with a strange, alien curiosity, slowly joined him. They began to hum. Not a song, just a low, resonant tone that vibrated through the deck. Boom, hum, boom, Hum. It was simple, primal, universal. The sound filled the chamber, seeping into the very structure of the ship. Hours passed. The drumming continued. The humming flowed. Xylos, in his own way, began to subtly adjust the energy emitters in his Xylian processing chamber, adding his own faint, rhythmic light pulses to the atmosphere. Cathar, still learning to control its emotions, sat quietly, his multifaceted eyes tracking the human drum. He felt the vibrations deep within his own biocircuitry. He didn't understand it, but it was a pattern, a rhythm, something stable in a universe of chaos. And then, a change. The shimmering cloud of Rylos, the Kryll, began to condense. Slowly, painstakingly, its tendrils of energy drew inward. The cloud became denser, more defined, coalescing into a more stable, albeit still amorphous, shape. It pulsed faintly, in time with the human drum. It was a faint, almost imperceptible response, but it was there. "It's listening," Eris murmured, not stopping his rhythm. "It's finding a center." The drumming and humming continued for days, sometimes by Eris, sometimes by Ilara, sometimes by other human volunteers. Xylos would spend hours observing, sometimes even contributing his light patterns. Cathar, remarkably, would sit quietly, sometimes even pressing a large limb against the bulkhead, as if feeling the vibrations through the ship's structure. The Kryll, Rylos, slowly solidified. It still didn't have a distinct form like the other aliens, but it was no longer dissipating. It was contained, centered. Eris, communicating through complex energy translators, managed to establish a basic feedback loop with Rylos. It wasn't dialogue, not yet, but it was communication. Rylos responded with subtle energy fluctuations that conveyed a sense of grounding, of containment. It was a tiny miracle. While Eris and his team worked on the psychological front, Ambassador Varma was trying to rally support. She opened communications with the few remaining functional alien governments. The Kryll, the Xylian, and the Grol had their own unique contributions, but they were all struggling. She explained humanity's unique approach, framing it not as therapies, but as internal system recalibration and pattern reintegration for the more logical species, and emotional rechanneling for the more volatile. She brought Xylos and Cathar, now both more stable, to speak to the Galactic Council, a holographic assembly of dwindling, desperate leaders. Xylos spoke first, his metallic voice calm. The humans, they did not offer solutions based on logic. They offered methods to process the illogical. They showed me the void. But they also showed me the connections that could fill it. They showed me how to draw the fear, how to put it outside myself. Then Cathar spoke, his voice still a low rumble but no longer filled with rage. My species, we fought the pain. We tried to push it away. The humans, they showed me to roar at it, to let the beast out, and then to watch it shrink, to feel it pass. The alien leaders watched, their own internal terror barely concealed. They could see the change in Xylos and Cathar. It was undeniable. A few, desperate for any answer, agreed to send their afflicted to the growing human fleet of empathy vessels. The Xylian and Grol governments, now seeing tangible proof, agreed to work closely with the humans, providing logistical support and whatever scientific data they still had. A new fragile alliance was forming, built not on military might or economic treaties, but on shared vulnerability and the desperate need for healing. A small team of human scientists led by Dr. Lena Hansen had been quietly working in the background, trying to pinpoint the source of the nightmare. Their initial hypothesis was a natural cosmic phenomenon, but as they analyzed the patterns of mental collapse across different species, they found an unsettling precision. It's too targeted, Lena explained to Eris one evening. They were in the ship's main observation lounge, stars crawling outside the vast viewport. It exploits species-specific vulnerabilities. For the Xylians, it's the interconnectedness of their logic. For the Grol, it's their suppressed trauma. For the Kryll, their amorphous nature. It's like it knows exactly how to break each mind. Eris felt a cold knot in his stomach. A weapon, then? Lena nodded, her face grim. An insidious, psychological weapon. We've traced its probable origin to the abandoned sector near the old Zygarian Empire ruins. The Xygarians were known for their advanced, often ethically questionable, psychological warfare. The Xygarian sector was shunned, rumored to be haunted. Its last inhabitants had vanished millennia ago, leaving behind only crumbling, overgrown structures. Sending a team there was dangerous, but the information was critical. Cathar, surprisingly, volunteered to go with the reconnaissance team. "My ancestors fought the Xygarians," he rumbled, his newly found calmness a stark contrast to his past rage. "They were known for their dark tricks. I will go. To honor my people. To face this enemy, even if it is unseen." Xylos, too, wanted to help. While he couldn't leave the empathy due to his delicate state, he offered his Xylian analytical abilities. He processed ancient Xygarian data fragments, correlating them with the nightmare's effects. The Xygarians, they studied fear. They weaponized despair. Xylos projected onto a holographic screen, showing chilling historical records. They sought to control minds not through force, but through overwhelming psychological pressure. This nightmare, it is their ultimate legacy. The recon team, including Dr. Hansen, a few human security personnel, and Cathar, journeyed to the Xygarian sector. The journey itself was eerie. Dead ships, their internal lights long extinguished, drifted aimlessly in the void. As they neared the designated planet, a barren gray world, a low, discordant hum began to permeate the ship. It wasn't sound. It was a vibration that seemed to go directly to the bones, to the core of their being. A subtle sense of unease settled over the human crew. Cathar's multifaceted eyes twitched. He let out a low growl, but it was not aggressive. It was defensive. "The air, it is heavy with dread," he stated, his voice a low rumble. Lena checked her sensors. "Psychic energy readings are off the charts. Something here is radiating pure, undiluted terror." They landed near a massive, cyclopean structure, half buried in the dust. It looked like a temple dedicated to pure despair. No signs of life, no movement. Just an oppressive silence, broken only by the low hum. As they disembarked, the air felt thick, heavy, like trying to breathe underwater. The dust beneath their boots felt oddly cold. Cathar raised his massive fist, his four smaller arms twitching. "This place," it tries to whisper lies into the mind. "It says there is no hope, no purpose." Lena felt it too. A rising anxiety, a sudden, inexplicable memory of every failure, every regret, every fear she had ever experienced, all amplified. She clenched her jaw, reminding herself of Eris's words, "Acknowledge, but do not be consumed." "Stay focused," she told her team, her voice a little shaky. "This is what it does. This is the weapon." Inside the structure, the hum grew louder, more insistent. Images flashed in Lena's mind, her lab destroyed, her research failing, her friends turning away. She knew it wasn't real, but the raw emotional impact was overwhelming. Cathar suddenly roared, a deep earth-shaking sound that pushed back against the psychic oppression. He was confronting it directly, using the cathartic release Eris had taught him. The roar seemed to momentarily disperse some of the oppressive hum. "It is a trick," Cathar bellowed, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "A lie. I feel it. I feel my rage. But it is my rage, not theirs." His actions, simple and direct, gave the human team a boost. They focused on their breathing, on their shared mission. They found the source, a vast, pulsating crystal at the heart of the structure, radiating pure, unadulterated psychic trauma. It was an amplifier, taking the latent despair of countless beings and broadcasting it across the galaxy. Back on the empathy, Eris felt the distant ripple of dread from the Xygarian sector, even through the vastness of space. He was in a group session with Xylians and a few Grol. A new Grol patient, still in the throes of the nightmare, suddenly began to whimper, its large body trembling. Its multifaceted eyes stared at an unseen horror. "The terror. It grows stronger," Eris observed, his voice calm. He looked at Xylos, who had become very still, and Cathar's absence was keenly felt. He activated the ship's communication system, a direct link to Lena's team. "Lena, are you there? We're feeling something here. Is it the source?" Lena's voice came back strained. We found it, Eris, a Xylian psychic amplifier. It's radiating pure despair. We need to shut it down, but the psychic pressure here is immense. Eris knew they couldn't just turn it off like a light switch. The buildup of despair was too great. Shutting it down suddenly might create a psychic shockwave that would shatter every mind in the galaxy, including their own. He had an idea. It was risky, deeply human, and utterly unconventional. Lena, do not shut it down, not yet. Can you connect our ship's primary communication array to that crystal? A direct psychic link? Lena was incredulous. Eris, that's madness. It could fry our systems, or worse, expose the entire crew to the full brunt of the nightmare. Eris was firm. We have to. We can't just stop it. We have to transform it. We have to process it. All of us. Together. He looked at Xylos, at Cathar's empty chair, at the trembling aliens in the room. This was humanity's core strength, to confront the unthinkable, not to erase it, but to find meaning within it. Eris began to prepare. He gathered every human on board, from the lowliest technician to Ambassador Varma herself. He explained his plan. We are going to open ourselves to the nightmare. We are going to let it flow through us, and we are going to transmute it. We are going to show it what it means to heal, to feel, to process, to find connection even in the deepest despair. There were whispers, fear in some eyes, but also a fierce determination. They had seen the terror it wrought. They would not let it win. He called upon his alien patients, the ones who had started to heal. Xylos, now quite stable but still feeling the whispers of the void, agreed without hesitation. He set up a Xylian processing circle, connecting his own energy to the ship's core. Cathar, still on the Xylian planet with Lena, would act as a conduit on that end, grounding the psychic energy. The process began. Lena and her team, despite the overwhelming fear, managed to establish the direct psychic link between the Xylian amplifier and the empathy. A wave of pure, unfiltered despair washed over the ship. Humans cried out, some fell to their knees. Memories of loss, of inadequacy, of profound loneliness flooded their minds. But Eris was there, his voice a steady anchor, amplified through the ship's internal speakers. Feel it. Let it come. Do not fight it. Just acknowledge it. Breathe through it. He led them in a guided meditation, a common human therapeutic tool. He spoke of resilience, of the human capacity to endure, to transform pain into strength. He spoke of shared grief, shared hope. The Xylians, guided by Xylos, began to project their geometric light patterns of processing, of finding order in chaos. The Grol, those able to, began to release low guttural sounds, not of rage, but of shared sorrow, a communal lament. Rylos, the Kryll, pulsed with a steady, rhythmic light, echoing the heartbeat drum. It was a symphony of healing, a chaotic, beautiful, deeply human response to an unimaginable weapon. The psychic feedback loop, instead of overwhelming them, began to change. The pure toxic despair flowing from the Xylian amplifier started to encounter a counter-current of empathy, of shared vulnerability, of conscious processing. The crystal on the Xylian planet, which had pulsed with dark energy, began to glow faintly, then brighter, with a clean white light. It was being purged. It was being cleansed. Cathar on the planet roared again, but this time it was a roar of defiance, of triumph. He felt the darkness receding, but instead of leaving a void, it left behind a quiet understanding. The psychic wave subsided. The crystal on the Xylian planet dimmed, its power spent, but no longer radiating malevolence. It was inert. A weapon transformed. On the empathy, exhaustion weighed heavily on everyone. But there was also a profound sense of shared relief, of triumph. Many humans were weeping, not from despair, but from the emotional release, from the sheer weight of what they had just experienced and processed. The aliens, too, showed their own forms of emotional release. Xylos's metallic body pulsed with clear, bright light. He looked at Eris, his eyes clear. The void, it is not gone. But now, there is light within it. My light. Our light. Our light. Cathar, back on the empathy, approached Eris. He knelt on one knee, a gesture of profound respect in Grol culture. You showed us how to fight the unseen enemy. Not with weapons, but with truth, with shared pain, with understanding. In the weeks and months that followed, the galaxy began to heal. The star carrier empathy and the growing fleet of human empathy vessels became centers of shared healing. They established sanctuaries of shared understanding on various worlds, places where aliens of all species could come to process their trauma, to learn the human ways of mental healing. Eris Thorn became a galactic figure, not as a conqueror or a scientist, but as a healer. He taught the Xylians to integrate emotional logic into their vast networks, to create data points for grief, for joy, for fear, to understand them as part of the whole, not as errors. They developed new light patterns that depicted complex emotional states, allowing them to process the world in new ways. The Grol, once prone to violent outbursts, learned new forms of communal release. They developed rumble circles, where they would gather and release their frustrations through controlled, rhythmic roars and stomps, purging their emotions in a way that was cathartic but not destructive. They learned to channel their warrior spirit into defending the vulnerable, into protecting the new sanctuaries. The Kryll, the energy beings, found new ways to maintain their coherence, to anchor themselves by resonating with the emotional frequencies of others, finding stability in shared presence. Rylos, the Kryll that Eris had drummed for, became a teacher, helping other Kryll to find their rhythm, their center. Ambassador Varma worked with the newly reformed Galactic Council. They established a universal declaration of mental health, based largely on human psychological principles. The galaxy, once on the brink of collapse, was now building itself anew, on a foundation of empathy, shared vulnerability, and understanding. There were still challenges. Some species struggled more than others. The healing was slow, a marathon, not a sprint. But for the first time, they were facing their internal demons, not alone, but together. One quiet evening, Eris stood on the empathy's observation deck with Xylos and Cathar. Below them, a newly established sanctuary of shared understanding glowed on a distant planet, a beacon of multi-species collaboration. It's a different galaxy now, Eris said, a soft smile on his face. Xylos, now capable of subtle expressive light shifts in his metallic skin, pulsed with a warm golden hue. Indeed, Doctor, we once sought logic and order above all. Now we seek understanding, even of the illogical. Especially of the illogical, Cathar rumbled, a sound that was now more like contentment than aggression. The universe is still full of dark corners, but now we carry light within us, the light you showed us. Eris chuckled softly. It wasn't just my light, Cathar, it was humanity's light, our messy, complicated, emotional, beautiful light. The light of knowing how to hurt and how to heal, the light of shared struggle. He looked out at the stars, a vast, complex tapestry of light and shadow. Humanity had not conquered the stars with weapons or technology. They had saved the galaxy, not by erasing its pain, but by teaching it how to feel, how to process, and how to heal, one shared nightmare at a time. The universe, vast and indifferent, now contained a new, powerful force, the resilience of the human spirit, woven into the very fabric of galactic society. And it was a much, much funnier place now, with Cathar trying to explain human jokes to bemused Xylians, and Xylos attempting to program a laughter algorithm into his species' mental frameworks. The galaxy was learning to laugh and cry and heal, and it was glorious.